Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 31 of Cars and Coffee. And if you're a car guy like me and you want to learn more about performance, then you're in the right spot. I'm Kenny Brown. Over the next hour, we're going to kind of share some of my experience, my vast experience, I would say, from professional motorsports and building great cars, and share it with you. You can get the benefit of all the mistakes I've made, so you don't have to make some of them. But today we also have a special guest. Tony the Tuner is going to be with us a little bit later on. He's one of the top tuners in the country to give us a few tips on tuning your Mustang. Going down my handy dandy list that Carrie gave me. Let's see. Oh, so stuff I forget to do. If you're on, we're live on Facebook and also YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. And if you click the little bell, I'm getting better at this, click the little bell, you'll get notifications on when we go live. Let's see, of course, questions, send your questions in. I'm always open to answer questions. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the IRS in Cobras. And we have a lot of people converting Fox bodies to IRS cars, which is really kind of cool. And I've got some, my artwork this month is the Formation Finish. This is another work by Nicholas Watts, one of my favorite automotive artists. I've got quite a few of his pieces. And this is the 1966 Le Mans and the three Ford GT40s finishing Formation Finish. That's why it's called. I think the lead car was driven by Chris Samus and Bruce McLaren. Back then, they only had two drivers. Today, some of these teams have like four. So, I guess that's back when men were men. Actually, that's back when racing was dangerous and sex was safe. So, but the times have changed, and we have changed right along with them. I've got a couple of little things. Oh, I don't need to tell you about David's motor. I mean, you've heard me talk about David, the customer I'm helping build a NASA AIX car remotely. Haven't had enough coffee yet. He's building a NASA AIX car. He's on the West Coast, and I'm here in Indianapolis. And the way it started, I think it's a 13 S197, and he really didn't want to go turbocharged or supercharged. He wanted a good naturally aspirated engine. So after a bunch of considerations, I decided rather than, hold on, this is Cars and Coffee, and I haven't quite had enough coffee this morning. So this is your cue to take a sip of coffee. He didn't want supercharged or turbocharged. So, I kind of noodled on it. And what I decided to do is use a 351 Windsor, all aluminum. So it was light, and originally wanted to stroke it at the 427, but our engine guy was talking to me, and he said for road race applications, he thought the 427 stroke was a little bit too much. It would rev better with a little shorter stroke, so we ended up at 408 cubic inches. And being all aluminum, it's light, it's dry sump, it's a really cool motor. And just to give you an idea why I went with the Windsor, the Ford Performance 5.2 XL, which is the motor everybody wants to use, is like 580 horsepower at 7,800 RPMs, 445 pounds of torque at 4,500 RPMs. Now, okay, ready for this? David's engine made 652 horsepower at 6,900 RPMs. At 7,000 RPMs, he's still making 650. 553 pounds of torque at 5,500 RPMs. That means that at 4,500 RPMs, where the Coyote makes its best torque at 440, at 4,500, he's 515 pounds of torque. So 70 pounds of torque up, and overall, he's over 100 pounds of torque up over the Coyote. And, I have an old saying, it's not my saying, it's just been around for a long time. Horsepower sells engines, torque wins races. So, we've got a real torque monster going into David's car. Pretty happy with the results. I mean, I've just been dying for weeks to find out what it says on dyno, and I finally got the results this week. So, moving right along, Oh, the thumbs up thing. She always highlights what I forget to say. Thumbs up, and of course, send some love with the little hearts. That really helps us spread the word. And if you've got some friends that you think could benefit from what we talk about here Saturday mornings, please share. It's the more the merrier. And if you're not a member of the Speed Therapy Society, I recommend that you join. I think we're over 500 members now, and it's all like-minded car people. There's a lot of camaraderie, a lot of chatter, lots of car pictures, and that's where the questions I talk about on Saturday all come out of the Speed Therapy Society. So if you're not a member, please join. And okay, I'm getting down the list. I'm not forgetting too much this time. Oh, sign up for the newsletter. I almost forgot that. Sign up for the newsletter. That way you get notifications when we're doing Cars and Coffee or any other special events. Speaking of special events, this Wednesday, if you notice, the frost isn't heavy enough yet, so I'm still plugged up from all my sinuses. Although it was frost yesterday morning, but not quite enough. So I'm hoping it's like a bittersweet. I want a frost to kind of kill all the pollen, but at the same token, I'm not really looking forward to winter. So anyway, special events. This Wednesday evening, I did a special event. It was on the SN95 platform with the Cobra 99-04 with IRS. And also, it was about the IRS. We have a lot of people that are putting the Cobra IRS into regular SN95 GTs, and also kind of like the big wave right now is putting IRS into Fox bodies. And so we had it was a really nice, I thought it was a nice presentation. Everybody seemed to learn a lot, but the big thing was the IRS package is what I talked about the most. And what we've done in as far as upgrading, but let me back up a little bit. My experience with IRS goes all the way back to the 70s, dealing with SVTA open wheel cars from the Fords, Formula Atlantic, Super Vs. And then back then I worked on a bunch of Triumphs, the Triumph TR6, the Spitfires. They all had independent suspensions. When it came out in 99, the Mustang, it was no big deal to me. I mean, kind of like the rest of the Mustang world went into a tizzy because they were at the time maybe 99% drag racing, and they just didn't know what to do with it. Well, I knew what to do with it. So that's when we started working on it, and we've sort of, I would say we are the experts for the SVT Cobra IRS. And we still support the 99-04 Cobras with suspension pieces and technical support. So it's a pretty cool platform, and I see us supporting the IRS for many years to come. But anyway, I talked about how in the process of, we have like 4 phases of upgrading the IRS package. The first is to kind of stabilize the differential and steering. It's a forward torque brace and aluminum diff bushings. And with the aluminum diff bushings, we can actually put the pinion angle up, which in a lot of cases helps reduce driveline vibration. We had a car, and I can't remember, 2001, 2000, something like that. That the guy was suffering with driveline vibrations. He had it with his Ford dealer multiple times. They changed the drive shaft, axles, everything. It wouldn't go away. He brought it to us. We just put our aluminum diff bushings in and changed the stack around and put the pinion angle up. The vibration went away. And the other part of the phase 1 is the rear steer kit that actually takes some of the rear steer out. I didn't say bump steer, I said rear steer. What I found in testing at Road Atlanta with Ford Racing and their FR500, that's, for those of you that don't remember, that was an SN95 with double wishbone front and IRS rear. At the back end at Road Atlanta, there's a double right-hand turn. On the second right-hand turn, the car got loose. So when I came back, I started playing with my geometry program, and what I found is that when it gets to a certain point of roll, and don't ask me what it is because that was too long ago, when it gets to a certain degree of roll, both rear wheels steer the wrong way. So that's why I was feeling kind of not quite a snap oversteer, but just all of a sudden the car wanted to get loose at the back. So what we do is we actually modify the pickup point on the carrier to take some of the roll steer out. And we've had people tell us that it helps a lot in acceleration. They can see on the dyno, the wheels don't want to move so much. So that's kind of phase one. We stabilize the diff and the steering, and that's on the path to start to get rid of the wheel hop. Well, the wheel hop is due to a lot of soft rubber bushings, and the fact that when the tires grip, everything twists and release, twist and release, twist and release, and that's why you get the wheel hop. And there's not enough shock or spring to kind of control all the motion in the back. So that's starting in phase one. The phase two is where we really start to improve the wheel hop as we go to one of our tubular lower control arm, and also convert the coilover. By converting coilover, that does a couple of things. First of all, it gives me complete control of spring rates. And those of you who've been with me for a while know that I custom pick the spring rates for every customer based on their application. And then with the shock, we have a much better shock. In fact, the shocks are custom built for me by Strange. A long time ago, we used to have Conies, but it was a special build, and it took like sometimes 2 months, and that was too long. So got together with Strange, and I took my shock dynos up and said, "This is what I want." I said, "Fine, we can do that." So we got the coilovers in the back. You need a single adjustable or double adjustable. 90% of the people don't need double adjustable. Single adjustable works fine. Anyway, that's kind of like phase two. We got a good shock, a good spring, and a super strong tubular lower control arm. Phase three is pretty simple. That's just a tubular upper control arm to take some weight off, and that's a really nice piece. And then stage four, which is the biggie, is we take the carrier and we whack off all the pickup points, and we actually make new brackets, and we put them back on in different positions. So I completely alter the rear suspension geometry. We also even take the inner point down lower so that we take all the roll steer out. We just started doing our rear steer kit a long time ago. And I see other people in the market now, they're doing what they call a rear bump steer kit. But to me, bump steer is the front of the car, that when you turn the wheel and you get a bump, the steering changes. At the back, and the rear wheels don't turn. They're just going up and down. So to me, it's not bump steer that's the problem, is roll steer. So that just goes to show you, I get copied, but people don't know why, but they'll copy me anyway. So anyway, that gets us through phase three. And at phase four, we're talking about the geometry on the K-member or the carrier, and we take all the roll steer out of it. We move the inner pickup point down even lower. And then we also whack off that great big ugly mount in the back, and we put a bracket that bolts right to the rear frame rail. So it's just solid. It just bolts. It's a solid mount. And all that really, the whole package. The cars just drive like a dream, especially teamed up with my front grip kit with the K-member and control arms and Caster Plus. Like I had that in my track car Kermie, which was 2001. Actually, it was my 2000 SEMA car, and I could drive that car all day. I could put anywhere on the track I wanted. So we can really make this IRS geometry work. One of the questions we got Wednesday night was, somebody asked, they said, "What's the process of sending the cradle in?" Because what we do, you need to send your cradle in, and we'll modify it and send it back. Now, if sometimes we'll be one ahead on cradles, and if we go one ahead, we can send that and trade you out. But we either have to have your carrier or a big core charge, because they're kind of getting a little hard to find. But he asked what's the best way to get there. This is an interesting story. We've been struggling come up with a cost-effective method for shipping these carriers. And one of our customers discovered a while back that the most cost-effective way to ship it is by Greyhound, believe it or not. Stick it on a bus. So that's what we're doing. Now we've shifted all our transportation of our IRS carriers to Greyhound. Who'd have thunk? So anyway, that's kind of what we went through in the. Of course, it took a lot more time explaining a lot more, but the IRS is really cool, and like I say, it's something we're going to be supporting for a lot of years. Somebody asked, how harsh is the ride with the solid cradle? You do pick up some NVH, but it's not like it's going to drive you out of the car. And to me, when you start modifying cars, there's always compromises. And, giving up a little MVH for a carrier that's rock solid, that nothing moves around with great geometry, I think far outweighs the small increase in NVH. And then somebody asked what the rear coilovers were. Actually, they're 2.5 ID diameter. Most of the U.S. shocks are all 2.5 ID, 2.5 inches ID. Now, the JRZs we get from Netherlands, those are 2.25, and a number of European shocks are 2.25. So, and then going down, that's the pinion angle. Somebody also asked about, do we need to slot the frame rail for the upper control arms? Well, when we first brought these out in 99, actually 2001, to ensure clearance for the upper control arms, we actually had a pattern and pieces. You cut a little notch in the carrier just so to have plenty of clearance. Well, we've gone beyond that, and we've actually now do an overbend in the control arm, so we really don't need to notch the rails anymore, which leads to an interesting story. If you've ever looked at the rules for NASA American Iron, there's a section on IRS, and it states you cannot notch the frame rails, and all the pickup points have to be original OE to run an IRS in American Iron. Well, the reason for that is I had some friends, some engineers at Ford that wanted to build a really hot American Iron car. They did a fabulous job on the car. They got it stripped out really light. They had a front suspension and the IRS. And the problem is that car was fast. I mean, really, really fast. And back then, most of the strength of NASA was on the West Coast. And, the West Coast guys were all live axle guys, and they had nothing. They had nothing that could compete with this car with my IRS in it. So they complained. So, we're kind of in the middle. We're not part of the West Coast group. So they changed the rules. So basically, they made my IRS illegal. So if you read through NASA rules, you'll see a paragraph on IRS. That's because of myself and a couple of really talented engineers from Ford. So, Carrie is coming up to give me a sign. I can't get by without these signs. In case you're just joining us, this is one I always forget. In case you're just joining us, I'm Kenny Brown, and this is the 31st episode of Cars and Coffee, where I try to share my extensive knowledge and background from professional motorsports and building really great cars. And also over my shoulder is, as some of you know, and if you don't, that's my trusty toolbox. That's what makes me different from just about everybody else out there that sells Mustang parts. I actually made my living out of my toolboxes for almost 30 years, and I still use it. And that top box, my Go box, has been with me to just about every major racetrack in North America and up into Canada. So that's why it's sitting back there. It's kind of like, this is my experience back there. So you took the sign down too fast. Oh, in case you're just joining, yeah,
You just said that.
I just said that.
What I just want to comment before you introduce Tony is we had a question that I'll have you answer after Tony's finished about what about an IRS and an S197?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Why don't I just answer that right now?
You think so? Okay.
Somebody asked about an IRS and S197. I can tell you that is something I've thought about, and I think it's like it's kind of like churning up in the back there how to do that. It's a little bit of a challenge just because of how the frame is in the back. I haven't really taken a super close look at it, but I have thought about it because we make these IRSs work super, super good. And right now, our focus is completely on introducing a new rear suspension piece that I will be introducing in a few weeks because we filed the patent on it last week. I've been working on this for years. It's an amazing piece of kit for the back of an S197 Mustang, and we'll be to that in probably a private session in the weeks to come. The guys in the Speed Therapy Academy got to be the very first ones to see what this new piece is. And I mean, they were pretty excited about it. I'm pretty excited about it. And we'll probably do like a special session, kind of like we did Wednesday night was all about the IRS for the SN95. And then also Carrie said that we'll be doing like one evening just on the S197, kind of workshop just on the S197 platform. But we got a new rear suspension piece that's now patented, or at least patent pending, and we'll be introducing that in a couple of weeks. It's going to blow your mind. So I think, and as far as S197, yeah, I've thought about it. I just haven't had a chance to take a really good look. But what this new piece does, it'll probably change your thoughts about an IRS and an S197. So with that, I'm kind of babbling on, and we should get to our super special guest star. He's one of the experts. I like to pull experts out of the industry, and we have like a full master class in the academy, which is the full evening. And Tony is probably one of the top tuner. He is the top tuner in the country. His company is Tuners Inc. And he teaches, he tunes. I mean, he's a really, really smart guy and a good guy too. So, good morning, Tony.
Good morning.
We've got some of our real cars and coffee people here, and could you share maybe some of the top tips in tuning a Mustang?
Sure. I mean, so I thought about this the other day, and I was trying to figure out the best way to talk about it. I'll just talk about it in the perspective of the road racing stuff to begin with. Probably the most asked question of customers when they bring the cars in and they're doing the testing is, what tuning should I do to the car to help me for performance, but also when I'm road racing? There's a couple of things that we can focus on. Number 5, the first one is what octane you're running. The fuel is a primary concern. If you're running E85, that's a concern. If it's running 93, if you're running 87, if you're running 100 octane, if you're running 110 octane, each of the gasolines have a specific stoichiometric ratio that we need to tune to. Give an example. If the car was a 2007, and let's say we were in 2007, gasoline back then, the stoic was 14.64. So all our tuning was based on that. Well, nowadays, everything's 10% ethanol. So with 10% ethanol out there, our stoic is now 14.08. So right off the back, right off the beginning there, we're 0.6 difference right off the base. So we need to correct that in the tune. And we have access to the fuel stoichiometric. If you're running VP Empty Squat or you're running MS 109, each of those fuels have a specific stoichiometric, and that needs to be set in the tune. So that's the first thing when it comes into tuning is, what fuel are you actually going to be running? And I know there's some limitations to some of the classes. I had a Corvette in here the other day that he could run 85 in certain races, and he couldn't run it in other races. So we had to tailor 2 tunes for him. I set him up with an extra tune on his MPVI2 cable so he could change it at the racetrack as well. So the next one is number 4. They asked me, okay, so what kind of performance gains am I going to get in my road racing? Well, in the drag racing world, we're trying to get it there as fast as we can. In the road racing world, we're trying to get there effectively. Okay, we want to be able to come out of the turns, we want to get on the straightaway, we want to be able to hit that and not have problems. So a couple of things we do a little different, and even Ford did this with the Boss 302s, was actually putting in a little bit of idle hang. So there's nothing like pushing in the clutch and it drops so far when you come off the clutch again, it actually unloads a chassis because you're against it. So we actually put a little idle hang in our road race cars. So as you depress the pedal, it stays up. So it allows you to pull it into gear without coming into there and downshifting and causing unloading of the chassis. I think Kenny mentioned that here a while back as well. So that's the next thing we do on the road racing part. Number 3. So one of the things that in the performance tuning is how hot is the oil temperatures. And I think Kenny's talked about this before, and the oil temperatures are coming into play. If you're not running an oil cooler on the dyno, I will intentionally put load on my dyno to run the oil temperatures up to see just how hot it's going to get. I can't simulate you running around the curves on the track, but I can usually get the oil temperature up pretty high to see where it's going to run. If it exceeds a certain amount, I personally think 205, 220 starting to get too hot on the oil. you need to get an oil cooler on a car. That's a tuning tip that I would tell you right off the bat that you need to do as your tuner or any other tuner. Most of them are not looking for your oil temperatures. I do simply, I've data logged several cars at Daytona, specifically a couple of GT 350s and GT 500s. Oil temperature becomes a primary concern. So that would be my third one on that one. Number two, what gear ratio are you running? A lot of people forget that the gear ratio is the effective part of getting you there. If you're only using part of your power band and you're not in the right power band between it, you need to make sure the gear is correct. I need to know what gear you're going to run, set up the gear ratio in the rear of the car, effective making your speedometer correct, so you know what's going on. And again, that actually works with the idle hang as well. Number one, the primary thing we deal with. Okay, so in the tuning world, we want that extra 10, 15 horsepower. Sometimes the effective horsepower is only roughly from, let's say a Coyote, from 68 to 7,200 is peak horsepower. We can pick that up. Now, under the curve, if you're not paying attention to it, you could actually lose some of that horsepower and torque. Most tuners will actually pattern it for the peak horsepower. We need to keep it under the curve. Under the curve is what you're going to feel when you come off of that curve or at the turn and you're getting on the pedal. So we want to make sure that the power band is all the way across the curve, not just peak. If you make, you know, an extra 10 horsepower at the top, but down below it's only like 1 or 2 horsepower, it's kind of a waste of your money and time. You want it across the band. That's the most important part. Later model vehicles, we're using variable cam timing to control that, as well as, again, with the right gear ratio to keep yourself in the power band the whole time. I kind of hit 5 of them pretty quick. There's lots of things to talk about. Those are the first 5 that I kind of came out with, and I know everybody has some questions here, so hit me up. Let's go for it.
Tony, why don't you before we get, I got the first question for you.
Okay.
But before we get into questions, why don't you tell these guys some of your backgrounds? It's absolutely fascinating.
So I came home from the hospital in a 64 and a half Mustang, so obviously I was going to be the destined Mustang guy. And throughout my teenage years, I was always involved in cars. Bought my first Mustang was a 68. And actually, the very first place I ever ran the car, believe it or not, was a road course. True story, automatic car. They had a Porsche club, had a little cone set up. I went out there, road raced the car. Obviously, didn't do very well, but it was fun, and I enjoyed it. And then obviously went more into the drag racing later on. But I went in the Navy. I wanted to be a heart surgeon. Money wasn't there for college, so I went in the Navy to make the money. And fell in love with a passion. I tracked submarines for a living in the military, became a master training specialist, curriculum developer, which put me in the mode when I retired in '98. I was full-time tuning cars, as well as I started teaching for multiple companies. So we've built everything from, you know, we had a Ford GT that we ran to Ford Proving Grounds with Gene Martindale and the whole crew out there. That was a pretty proud moment. All the way to my normal customers every day, which people going drag racing today at the track. And I just finished helping out a circle track guy, a road race guy, and his Corvette last week saved him from a catastrophic failure. So I've been around doing a long time. It's my passion. I enjoy doing it. I've been doing it 35 years, tuning cars, from carburetors and distributors all the way up. And every day you learn something. And I tell people that if you're on here with Kenny's thing, you're learning as well. So every day we learn something, and that makes our passion even better. So that's kind of where I came from.
Okay, well, I've got the first question. Okay, here is the scenario. We have in our shop right now, it just came in this week, a 2008 Ford Racing FR 500S. Those were the cars that were built specifically for the Mustang Challenge. And the irony is, this is actually one of the 3 Speedworks cars that I engineered in the Mustang Challenge. But anyway, it's in here, and it's going to be a full Kenny Brown car when it's done. Full suspension. He's getting a new rear suspension that we're going to talk about in weeks to come. Front grip kit, rear grip kit, JRZs, plus the big, our super Pro 4R big brake kit. Anyway, I thought, well, it's here. Let's give it just a little more juice. We don't want to really go to the max and wear it out. We just want a little more juice. So the direction I want to go, because it's a Ford Racing product, I thought we'd put in the Ford Racing hot rod cams, the intake manifold, and the Ford Racing 62 millimeter throttle body. It's already got headers and a cold air kit. Do you have like a tune in the books that would be close to that?
Absolutely. That's the nicest thing about being able to tuning this long. And I store everything on Dropbox. So I have tunes all the way back to 97, Kenny. I have tunes all the way back. I have my Fox body stuff along for everything too. So, and I pretty much have every software out there. So I keep track of everything. So I've done several of the FRPP kits. The hot rod cams alone are worth about 8 to 10 horsepower. They're more of an idle chop thing for people, but they do give you an extra right 150, 200 RPM with the FRPP intake and that throttle body. That rod kit is basically like a 20, 22 horsepower gain right off the bat. And it's in the peak power where you're actually using it.
Cool. Well, that's just, so what you're telling me is if some of our guys out there have some modifications to their cars, if they call you up, you might have a tune in the books you could just send to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've done it. More than likely, we've probably done it. And if we haven't, we're going to investigate and make it right.
And the company is Tuners Inc.
Tuners Inc. of North Florida. Like I said, I've got a full all-wheel drive dyno in my facility. I actually don't turn wrenches anymore. See toolbox on your back. My toolbox is out there, but I don't have time to turn wrenches anymore. I'm tuning 4, 5, 6, 7 cars a day and remote tuning and helping customers around the planet.
So, and I'm sure that they can find Tuners Inc. on the internet.
Absolutely.
So, okay, Carrie, have we got any questions?
Yes, we do. Okay, our questions today is what type of information do you need before creating a custom tune file or calibration?
Okay, so the question was, what do you need? What do I need to have to do a custom tune? The first thing is on the vehicle, depending on what software you're using, we're going to need to know the strategy, a device you're using. If you're using an SCT device or using an HP MPVI2, with the SCT device, I would need the strategy and the serial number of the tuner, of the handheld, I should say, and then a breakdown of a list of mods. What fuel you're running, what gear you're running, if you're running headers or not, what intake, throttle body, mass, air, all those things come into play for us to build the custom tune. Once we know that, we can build the custom tune, set it up. I always like the customer, and I will tutor them on how to data log the car. That is the most important part to me. I need the data logs to confirm everything's correct. 9 times out of 10, we'll find something that may be wrong that's not tune related while we're diagnosing the car.
Okay. Well, that kind of that speaks to my question and somebody else's question at the same time. So, Carrie, we have another question.
Yeah, sure. See, what if you need to return the ECU to a stock calibration or tune?
So nowadays, one of the things people, when you have an SCT device, you just hit return to stock and it'll reload the stock tune back to the vehicle. If you're using a Diablo, the same thing. If you're using an HP MPVI2, you just return the vehicle back to stock with that. Very simple. If we're doing a tune on the vehicle and we do it on premises and then you leave and you need a stock tune in the future, I have no problem. I'll normally send out, have a spare MPVI2 cable. If I've done it with that, I'll send it out to you, help you load the factory tune back on, and you're all set to go.
And let's see, is the ECU, I lost the question. Does the ECU tuning affect warranty?
Anytime you flash a computer, you take on the personal accountability that it may void your warranty. Now, according to the Magnuson Act in 1996, they have to prove that caused the problem. But here's a common thing. In the Chevrolet world, they want the DOD turned off, the automatic active fuel management. People turn it off all the time. They go to the dealership and they say, well, your active fuel management's not working. We're going to void your warranty because, your rear end's making noise. No, that's not the case. They can't do that. There's legal things involved with that. But there are flash counters. They can count the flash counters on the GM world. On the Ford world, they can see if the checksums have been changed. So what I tell people to do is find a dealer that works with you, that knows that the car's tuned or modified. 9 times out of 10, they'll work with you. If you come in there with a rod hanging out the side, don't expect Ford to eat it when your responsibility. If you were out road racing the car and it got hot in the oil temperature, that's not on Ford. All right, that's basically on personal accountability and at that point. But I have many dealers that I work with, as well as my customers around the world, that have very good dealerships that work with them. And it's go as far as hey, there's a tune in the vehicle. I know it's there. It's not going to happen. But if you come in there with a blown rod hanging out the side of it, that's a whole different story.
Okay, next.
This is from Bear to Drift. Does Tuners Inc. tune, I might not be saying, FiTech EFI systems, FitTech?
So Yeah, we tune a lot of standalones. Phytech, if it's a Phytech system, make sure you have the latest update on them. There's some older softwares and firmwares that were not working correctly. Phytech systems are great for cruising street rods and some road racing stuff. I would caution you that if you're going to use a Phytech system, make sure that you're using the correct wideband, make sure there's no exhaust leaks, and the fuel system upgrade needs to be done. But we do tune Phytech.
Okay, that's interesting. And then Colby Ward has a question. How does remote tuning work?
Okay, so it's pretty simple. The magic thing that we need to have is something called Team Viewer, which is downloadable free. I pay for it because I use a professional version of it. But you download Team Viewer, as long as you have a handheld or an MPVI2, I can remote in, set things up on your laptop that you can put to the car. I can look at your data logs, put the tune on there and actually do it live while you're sitting there. Most of the day, I usually probably do 2 or 3 remote cars a day for my customers around the world. And matter of fact, at 4 o'clock this morning, I was online in Australia.
Wow.
Good day, mate. So I'm curious, what was something like, what is it like a cost for doing your remote tunes for people?
Okay, so if someone calls typical, I had a 99 Cobra guy, called me a couple weeks ago. He had bought an SCT device and he wanted to have a tune for it, and he wanted a remote tune, and it's just a naturally aspirated car. It wasn't crazy combination. He did not have a wideband, so I did have him source out a wideband. Very important to have that because we need to know what the air fuel is. Once we set it up, we had the base tune and 3 or 4 pulls on the street, and he was ready to go. Cost on that, he was looking at $250. Nothing crazy at that point. Depends obviously the combination. If you call me up with a twin turbo and supercharged vehicle, compound boost, it's going to be a little more obviously. But we've done all from naturally aspirated all the way up to twin turbo and compound boost. So
that's interesting. That's like pretty reasonable, because I know what it costs to go into a tuning shop and get a car tuned on a dyno. So that's a huge savings. Okay, another question, Carrie.
Yeah, Bear to Drift has another question regarding the Phytech. Can you remote in on a Phytech?
Absolutely. If, like I said, Team Viewer, as long as you have Team Viewer software, I can remote in on the Phytech and adjust accordingly and take a look at the things. No problem. You're looking at the same thing I would be in the software. So as long as we can access it, we're good. On a laptop, that's the key.
Okay, I have a 2-part question here from Brian West. When swapping engines across generations, do you have a recommendation for standalone engine management, and how do you make everything else continue to work for street?
Okay, so a couple things. Dealing with a later model vehicle, if you're using a control pack, obviously the control pack's not going to control your dash. So if you're trying to keep everything on the dash working and you're swapping from a 5.4 to a 5.0 Coyote motor, something like that, it's going to be hard to make the dash inputs work. It's not impossible. I've seen it done. If you have exceedingly a lot of money, you can do a Motec system, have an OS written that will control everything. So it is not impossible, but the OS costs you around $9,000 to $10,000, and I'm sure some other people could chime in on that. But there are capabilities of doing that. The common swap seems to be the Coyote as of late. I have a 3-valve car that we just finished a swap in. Obviously the dash did not, read certain things. I was able to make temperature reading and some other things, but he ended up doing a different dash. He actually picked up a Coyote dash and had inputs done to that, which actually helped. So it's not impossible to do, but in the swap world, you kind of get some compromises that you have to deal with.
That just made me think of something. What if somebody put a Coyote into an SN95 and had something like one of the Holley injection things with the Holley dash?
Oh yeah,
that would work.
So,
you make that work?
The Holley system's awesome. I went to the Holley schools. I go to school all the time myself, guys. If there's a school out there that somebody's putting on, I go to it because I want to learn every day. The Holley tier schools were awesome. If you ever get a chance to take them, do it. The Holley system's great with the dash. You can put everything on that dash, configure it for whatever you want to do. If you could imagine how something works and you can wire it, you can control just about anything with a Holley system. If you want the dash lights to flick at you, if you want the overhead light to blink at you when you hit, 200 mile an hour, you can control anything with that system, with the IOs.
Well, that's pretty cool. That's something I didn't know.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Okay, I have another question for you. First of all, Tony, Let's see, here it is. What about data logging?
Obviously, looking into the engine, the only thing that we can do to see what's going on with the engine, obviously, is data logging. Other than pulling a spark plug is the only thing that tells you what's inside the engine by looking at it. There's nothing else you can physically do at this moment in time. But data logging is the most important part. I recommend, if you are road racing the car, log your car. It may not for every pass, but I actually tell the guys, log the car every time they're on the run, because if something's going on, you come back and you can't determine what it is. You can look at your data log and see. You can see where the oil temperature got high. You can see where the timing's being pulled due to a knock. You could actually see if the car's spinning, just from the fact of the RPMs moving in the mile an hour, not going up, or clutch slip. So data logging is extremely important. There's certain configs that you want to use for data logging. And also remember that most of your data logging will take time or memory. So if you're trying to log every single PID on the software, it's going to take time. So not everything will be accurate. But on a road racing style, I tell the guys, as well as drag racing, data logging is most important. Give me logs. You give me logs, I can tell you what's going on every time.
Cool. So, okay, I'm going to getting back to that. So this customer that we're doing, he lives in Nevada with this FR500S and the Ford pack on top. So he could actually download the data into his SCT and then send it to you, and you can look at it and make any adjustments and send it back to him, and he pushes it into the car. Absolutely.
We can actually do it while he's sitting there. He can send it to me. I can do a live link right back to it, and set up, fix things or whatever else. Whether it's an SCT device at that point or an MPVI2, HP, or Diablo for the same thing. The data logging we can access, we can see.
I think that's pretty cool. Where technology has gone, I got to tell you, it's a long ways from, I was setting Weber carburetors and SU carburetors with this little vacuum thing. So, okay, what do we have next, Carrie?
We have from Sal. He has a really good question. How do you make the ABS work in an early S197 with a Coyote control pack?
Well, the control pack is not set up to run ABS. It's not designed. It's a standalone, doesn't have anything with ABS inputs. So in order to do that, I don't think we could actually do that physically through the control pack. There's a company in England, and I want to say it's Race something. I have to remember. They designed the traction control for the Ford GT that Bill Knoblich built out in California. So he kind of set that stuff up, and he used the ABS to control it. So I know it could be done as a standalone, but not necessarily probably through the control pack itself, because it's its own entity. Obviously, you can use some inputs from it or outputs as well, but you would have to have someone that had the technology and the software and the firmware to control the ABS module as a standalone. And I'll have to research that company's name in England that did that stuff. And I'll check with Bill on that in California.
Okay, so in other words, the ABS will not work without the processor.
Correct.
So what if somebody did a Coyote upgrade and used the control pack but left the factory processor in?
Well, I mean, sure, as long as you had the input.
Going to the engine, obviously.
Yeah, because the body control module stuff and the inputs from it are what's controlling the ABS. So as long as it had the specific speed inputs and the RPM inputs, I don't see why it couldn't be controlled. And I know they make stuff to do it, like I said, because we had that Ford GT done, which didn't have traction control, but it does now with that kit using a factory processor. So it's a standalone deal. So I know that it could be done. I do not know how to do it myself.
It made me think of something. I think that some of the race car guys were using a Bosch ABS system. I don't know if that would tie into the Ford one or not. I'm gonna have to check on that. But so yeah, you got a problem with ABS and engine swaps.
Mm-hmm. So. And again, depend on, I don't know about you, but in the courses you're doing, if the ABS and the traction control is not controllable, then it's kind of useless for you, because if it's doing something when you don't want it to do it, then that comes into play, and you need the control, and that's why that one company built it. We had a launch control with it, we had a road race control with it as well.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and we have one more question here from Bob Jones. Bob Jones is actually part of the Speed Therapy Academy, and actually probably heard you earlier, Tony, when you did your master class for us. Bob Jones has on the idle hang, would changing to a lightweight flywheel affect the hang, or does the ECU correct for that?
The ECU does not correct for the torque. We'll call it kinetic energy, right? So we have a flywheel that has, let's say we have a 60-pound or 50-pound flywheel, and when you let off the throttle, it's going to, obviously keep up some, whereas a lightweight flywheel really has no stored energy, which is why you can't start off from the stoplight without revving the engine up higher, because you have no stored energy to move the vehicle. So at the higher RPMs, like with the Boss 302, on the idle hang part, it's more controlled, not really from the throttle or from the flywheel, but more of a throttle RPM versus control at that point. So with a flywheel, I guess I can answer the question. If you change a flywheel, I'm using a Boss 302 as an example, going to a lightweight flywheel, which I don't think I do because you wouldn't be able to drive it out of the hole. But if you did, I don't think the idle hang would really be affected, simply because you're using the RPM versus throttle body angle to control that idle hang.
Okay, cool. That reminds me of something else. Sure, everybody would like to know about. I know that when, like on the Coyotes, if you go to like a lightweight aluminum flywheel, there's something in the engine that has to be, you have to like rev it up or do something like that. Go ahead.
Okay, so anytime, and this is because Ford built this way, the Coyote mode, and most of your late model Fords are this way as well. The crank sensor ring, the actual crank sensor ring is on the back of the crankshaft, and it sandwiches between the flywheel or flex plate, between the two. If you disturb the flex plate or you disturb the flywheel, doing a tranny swap or converter swap or whatever else, if you disturb that, you have to go back and do a crank relearn. And here's why. That actually ring could move plus or minus 8 degrees. So you can imagine the catastrophic failure if they're off on the 8-degree positive side. Okay, so it could be really, really bad. So whenever you are done, you should always get it up to temperature before you run around and drive the car. Get it up to temperature, do a crank relearn, which you can do through an MPVI2. You can do it through your SCT device. You can do it through the Diablo device or an N-Gauge. So you have to do a crank relearn whenever you disturb that. And that syncs up the cam timing and the crank timing for adequate spark timing as well.
Oh, that. I think everybody needs to know that, because we get people all the time that put a lightweight crankshaft or lightweight flywheel in, and they'll pick up like a weird miss.
Yeah, you'll get code 315 and random misfire 300. In 2011, so you know, the reason I found this out, we actually did several of our first 2011 Mustangs, and we were racing them, and one of the clutches went out. It went to the dealer. They put a new clutch in it. The guy picked it up. The next day calls me and said, "Hey, I blew my car up." And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm taking it back to Ford. The motor blew up." He says, "I wasn't even driving it hard." So it didn't even have a tune in the car. So one thing that, he called the Ford dealer and says, "Oh, we'll bring it in. We'll check it out." So he brings it in there, and they're like, "We don't know what happened. There's no tune in the car, and we're not sure." Well, during that period of time, Ford started realizing something was going on. So they realized that the repair shop was not doing the crank relearn, and it was costing Ford a lot of money. So now if you go to Ford and you have something done, at the end, the very last thing on that sheet is crankshaft relearn successful or not. And they will not release the car unless the crankshaft relearn is successful. So, and most of your mom and pop shops and other shops don't know this. So it took a little learning curve. And I did a Tech Tuesday on this, matter of fact, just last week from the tuning school. That's the school that I teach for out of Odessa. And we have a bunch of information on there. One of them was I just did the crank relearn so people would understand how it worked and was able to function and do it. So if you have a late model Coyote and you've never had a crank relearn and you did some work to the transmission, it's a simple process. Get it done. Make sure it's safe.
I can attest to that. If you don't, on Ruby, we had a problem with that. It was like all of a sudden it would have the code would be random misfire, and it would kind of like stutter, and then after a couple of turns, boom, it was back to normal again. So yep. Yeah, I can attest how important that is. So I think we don't have any more questions. I think Carrie, you said you had something.
Well, just real quick, Bear to Drift. Tony, I want to let you know, said he was one on the FiTech questions. He said, thank you. He'll be reaching out. And that just reminds me, if any of you do reach out to Tony, let him know that you came from Kenny's Cars and Coffee. I think that'd be good information for him.
Or
Yeah. definitely let me know. Keep in touch, and I'm looking forward to see how these go.
Okay, well, I think this has been really cool.
Oh, real quick, does Tony have a YouTube channel?
I don't have a YouTube channel. I'm on a bunch of other people's YouTube channels. Andrew from Mustang Lifestyle and several other companies have done stuff with me over the years. And so, they follow me on there. But I personally do not have one. And really, I'm on my dyno from usually 9 in the morning until 6 in the evening every day, tuning cars as well as remoting. So I haven't really ventured into that yet, although people have been asking me. So.
Well, we have 2 more questions that just popped up. First of all, Ernie, I apologize. I know your question was asked earlier. I'll ask it now. Can you turn the red key in the Boss 302?
Oh, yeah. So with the software we have now, and I mentioned this before in the masterclass, we can actually do the tune and modify the tune. So you still have both key functions. It's not a big deal. We actually have in the software the way to determine both sides of it using MPVI too.
Okay, something interesting about the red key. When it first came out, we put a car on the dyno with and without the red key, and the difference in power was negligible. What we did notice, though, is it seems like the throttle responded a little bit quicker, but as far as power, it just was like a little teeny bit.
Yeah, pedal mapping, and then the sound, obviously with the what we call the ghost cam, they would basically all you're doing is creating more overlap at idle at that map point, and we can talk about map points later on in one of the classes, but the Boss calibration, when it first came out, people were talking all this horsepower difference. I put on a dyno, is right. There was no difference in horsepower per se. Although the throttle is better, the pedal map is better. And if you don't have a Boss car and you want a pedal map that's better and you don't want to do a stock tune, contact JMS for one of their pedal maxes. It works great.
Yeah, we use them on all our cars.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that doesn't know what pedal max is, I call it a turbocharger for your right foot, because it just makes the response of your accelerator to the processor to the throttle instantaneous. And it comes with a little knob. You can go from 0 to 100%. And I typically drive
avoid
around,
the warranty.
Yeah, I drive around like 60, 70% most of the time. Although when it rains or snow, I go all the way back to 0. Because I found if it's 100% in the parking lot, and you're trying to go around, the car just leaps. As soon as you hit the gas, the car just leaps. It's so reactive. Mm-hmm. So no, we put pedal max in everything. If anybody is more interested in that, just give us a call and we'll talk to you more about it. Carrie, so we got a couple more questions came in.
Ernie has a question on the red key. He asked first, but there's a follow up. He says there are 800 changes with the red key. Is it a road? Are there any road racing differences?
So there's idle hang, the exhaust burble, as you want to call it, which is diesel fuel cutoff is modified. I would say you're probably right about 800. I haven't looked through all the changes. I have a difference. I can see the differences in the software. The nice thing about it tells me red key, and stock key. So I can tell what things are modified in the tune with that. So there is some idle hang stuff there. There is, and it was, again, road racing. The burble, the ghost cam, which are all controlled, and there are a lot of little small changes. But as for spark and aggressive power, there's not really any more aggressive power from going to the red key on a dyno. Let's put it that way.
Okay, and this is the last. You have,
nope, go ahead.
Okay, this is the last question. Bob Jones asked again. Crank relearn for earlier cars too, like the 01?
No, there's no need for a crank relearn because your crankshaft, the sensor is actually behind the timing chain and gear set, and it's not controlled the same way. So no, that isn't a concern there, especially, and that's a non-variable cam vehicle, which is one of the reasons why. Variable cam meaning that it's not moving it. There's no phaser moving it, whereas your 04 up has a phaser, it does move it, and even though that one's on the front of it, doesn't really necessarily need a crank learn. But once you have one that's not mounted solidly, like on your 11 up Coyotes and late model Fords, you have to do the crank relearn if it's been disturbed.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that wraps us up on questions.
Yeah.
I want to sincerely thank Tony for being with us this morning. I hope everybody learned a little something, and now you know how to get a tune without spending a whole lot of money. So,
he's a master class.
Oh, and
he did a master class on that.
Yeah, Terry's talking at the same time. Yeah, he did a master class, which was pretty cool because there's a whole lot more information in the master class for the Speed Therapy Academy. But but if you guys like have me bringing some of my friends, my experts in from the industry, let us know. I know a lot of people, and this is something we do for the academy. And Carrie decided we'll do like a shorter version for Cars and Coffee. So if you want to see more of my friends and experts, just let us know. So aside from that, again, I want to thank Tony immensely. This has been really cool. Plus, we'll be getting in touch with you for the tune for this FR500S.
Not a problem.
So with that, everybody, we will.
S197 next week.
Oh, Carrie said we're going to talk about S197 chassis and suspension next week. Mm-hmm. Okay, almost forgot that.
We have a really cool brake kit to show.
And and then we've got the big brakes in for this car. I'll show you that. Along with the Jersey shocks. This is going to be a way cool car. We've got our own racing brake package that's pretty awesome, and I'll be showing you guys that tomorrow if you haven't seen it in the past. So with that, really appreciate Tony being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yep. For the rest of you, we will see you next Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Goodbye.